Hi, and welcome back to the HaPi podcast. One of the big objectives of this podcast is to try and remove some of the barriers of knowledge sharing that can exist from time to time within our industries. And in this session, we're going to be looking at innovation or innovative solutions that are offered to either the NHS or to pharmaceutical companies, healthcare companies, and medtech as well. I'm going to be speaking to a variety of different people who are in a position to offer those different solutions and are currently doing that. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hi everyone, welcome back to another session in our HaPi podcast, the Healthcare and Pharmaceutical Insights podcast. And once again, I'm delighted to welcome another esteemed guest to the podcast today, and that is Bruce Ritchie. So Bruce and I have done a little bit of work together in the past, and I'm going to allow him to give an introduction to who he is. Perhaps Bruce, you could maybe give us an idea of what you did prior to what you do just now, because obviously there's a connection there with the pharmaceutical industry, and just give us an update of what you're doing just now. So welcome, and give us a bit of an intro. Let's hear who you are, please.
Yeah, hi Colin, and thank you for describing me as esteemed. That's probably the first and last time that's ever likely to happen in my life.
Scottish and esteemed.
But I'm going to take it, yeah. Thank you. So yes, I'm Bruce Ritchie. What have I done over the years? I started life as a Pharma rep, so up in the north of Scotland, northeast of Scotland, covering almost half geographically of Scotland, everything north of Perth, pretty much.
GP rep.
GP rep, yeah. So, draw a line between Perth and Fort William, and if you go up or right, then that was on my territory. So it was about 1,400 Scottish GPs that I had to go and see.
The best GPs,
yeah, the best GPs. And so, I did that for about 3 years, enjoyed that. Challenging role, learned a lot. My manager used to describe it as character building. I think that was about right, but it was good, It stood me well, some of the lessons I learned all that time ago. Then I went into marketing. I did brand management for probably about 10 years in total. Got bounced around with a few mergers and acquisitions and things like that. But, various guises of brand management, marketing, that sort of thing for about 10 years. And then went agency side. And I first off moved over as a strategist in a small but growing network. And then ran a med ed shop for someone else. After that, moved into WPP and was a strategist, and then ran some big accounts for them for about 10 years. And then about 10 years ago, I set my own business up, and I've been doing my own thing since. So that, if you're quick with the maths, allows you to age me at early 50s. So I've been in the pharma industry or around the pharma industry all of my days.
You've not had a tough paper round then. Some people I would say they come on maybe would. You've not had a tough paper round. You're obviously, but you are just back from holiday, so you're looking fresher and brighter, obviously. So
yeah. Nicely. Well, as Scottish people, as you'll know yourself, I've gone through the stages of going from blue to white to red, and just basically some sort of like light tan. So there we go.
And where are you based now, Bruce? You're based down south now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm down south. Yeah, Bracknell actually for my sins, just on the edge of Bracknell.
Good, lovely, good stuff. So good, thanks for the intro. It gives people a bit of an idea of who you are and what you've done. And you and I connected about 3-4 years ago when I was in my previous role, and we did a bit of business together. One or two things. I helped you out in a conference and an enjoyable trip to Munich on the back of that as well, and supporting you in something. And then we helped you bring somebody on. You were trying something out from a recruitment perspective at that time. So that's how we connected, and we've kept in touch on a few different things. And I always enjoy the kind of few phone calls we have across the year, just chewing the fat about different ideas. And this is what we got on to talking about. You're very much in my perception anyway, you're very much an ideas man. I've got an idea. And a few times you've picked up the phone to me and said, let me just run this past you. And the other thing I like about you is you've presented ideas in the past and you've gone, nah, that didn't work. And you've maybe decided to bin it or whatever. But that's why in this particular series, we're talking about innovation within pharma, innovative ideas, innovative solutions. And you've been at possibly both sides of the fence on this. So you've had people presenting innovative ideas to you and you now do that as well. So before we talk about that, how within pharma, how important do you really think having that kind of constant stream of innovative solutions and innovative ideas is for the pharma industry nowadays?
So I think pharma's quite interesting in this regard. I mean, it is an industry by definition that has to be innovative because it invents drugs for its very existence. I think in the marketing side of it, I think it's really uninnovative in the sense that it very rarely does anything new, different, and innovative in my experience. Actually, that's the exception rather than the norm. In fact, I think the system seems to encourage people to do what they usually do, unfortunately. And I don't think that's because the people working in it, the marketeers and that, lack for innovation or lack for a desire to do different things. I just think they're sort of constrained a little bit, or at least perceive themselves to be constrained in a framework that doesn't necessarily encourage risk-taking, which I find quite it's a little bit of a contradiction, really. You know, here's an industry that risk takes constantly for its very, and yet actually in a marketing sense, it's very risk-averse. Yeah, so I mean, it's in that regard, it's interesting. Is there a point to innovation in pharma in the marketing sense? I've got to focus very much on the marketing and medical side of the business, not the kind of research side of the business. I mean, that's a given there. I think there's a bloody great opportunity if all of your competitive set is relatively uninnovative. The opportunity to stand out, hopefully for some good reasons.
I think, I mean, because obviously in my kind of, if you want to call it day job, working for Evolve, the people that stand out when they present themselves for a job, either with us or with our clients, are the ones that say, I've got an idea, and certainly when we speak to recruiting managers or directors or whatever, they always like people now with ideas. Now, you're right, you hit on something there just now, that not all of them will come to fruition because of, you know, we are under a code of conduct, you know, and we've got certain rules and regulations, and that's fine, and absolutely we need to abide by that. But the industry, I feel, just needs that constant stream of, what about this? What about this? Why don't we try this? And as soon as that stops, then it's not that the industry becomes dead as such, but then the life kind of gets sucked out of it, and you know, you lose that kind of personality behind it. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I definitely would. And I mean, I think you have to sort of see it a little bit as an industry rather than individual companies, because you know, I mean, there's I mean, you know, I constantly over the years had lots of different ideas that maybe haven't been done before or haven't been done in a particular way. I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of colleagues who are similarly minded. You know, and you'll find that for every new idea that you have, you can throw it at sort of 20 odd people in the pharma world, and 19 of them will definitely not want to do it. Great idea, but they'll either not see it, or they will see it, but they won't agree with it. Or they'll see it and they agree with it, but they just can't do it in their particular situation. But there's always someone who can do it. And, you know, and that's good, because then these things tend to happen. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work. When they work, then it's good, because other people see they work and they tend to sort of blossom and then go left and right. And lots of people do them, you know, and I've, over the years, seen quite a few ideas that have worked that way, you know, ideas that I've been involved with, ideas that other people have come up with, you know.
So that's what I was going to say to you. I mean, you don't necessarily need to mention company names or products or whatever, but it may be along a kind of stream. But what have you seen over the years that has really worked, and is there a reason why that's worked? And on the other side, what's not worked, and is there a reason why that's not? Because I've got my views on that, but I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the early days of patient support programs are quite interesting. I mean, I actually was lucky enough to be involved in one or two right back at the beginning of that sort of idea, you know. So we've got someone, they're on drug, they're maybe not doing well on drug, they're not staying on drug, they're struggling to use drug or whatever. And at the time, I remember these sort of programs were always, we can't possibly do that. How can we possibly talk to patients? You know, that's almost unimaginable, and shut down really early. And, you know, nowadays, when you look at that sort of thing, you would see them as kind of normal day job, everyday type of programs. But I mean, I remember some of the first ones, and it was just like complete and utter, it's like you were a madman suggesting something like that, you know. but they've worked, and they've worked quite well. I mean, I'm in a discussion with somebody at the moment about one. We're just putting some numbers together, and it's a good commercial idea. It's a good morally based idea. It helps people. It's good from a customer's point of view, and undoubtedly this organisation will go on and do it. But I mean, that's one of the ones that I think is quite interesting. Some of them are maybe not so great. I mean, I remember the advent of the iPad and the digital sales aid. I mean, I have to say that for me is one of the best cases of just because you can doesn't mean you should.
You should. No, that's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I've over the years delivered loads of these things. Personally, I think they're anathema to good selling. I think, they just sort of suck all the air out of the room and stop an individual speaking to another individual and having a conversation, because he's trying to fight with technology. But iPads came and we all had to have one. Because people are, what it shows, I think, is people have a desire to do things differently and innovatively. And certainly selling with an iPad when it first came out was innovative. Whether it was any good or not, I'm less convinced, but it was certainly innovative, at the time.
I think there's this thing within pharma that there's almost a bit of a reluctance to do something until somebody else does it. So, without mentioning, obviously, company names and such, but you're almost waiting to see, right, well what are they doing? Are they doing it? Right, we'll do it, and maybe that's slightly controversial in some ways, but I think there is in that space sometimes there's a bit of a reluctance to try innovation in certain areas because whether it's regulations or whatever it is or what it was saying in the marketplace, and we could probably all think of companies that have tried things that companies have tried and they have completely flopped, whether it be the iPad idea and people think, no, that was a disaster. But actually, on the other side, some people probably quite like that. But you're right, that was one of these ones where, well, we've got to do it because they're doing it. No, you don't actually.
Well, yeah. I mean, so to me, it opens up one of the paradoxes that comes up all the time, right? So, I mean, I've probably been on the receiving end of easily 1,000 pitch briefs, and if I had a penny for every time the pitch brief says, we need something really innovative. Yeah, actually, most of the people who are looking for this really innovative thing will never, ever, ever do that really thing unless somebody else has already done that innovative thing, which by definition makes it not very innovative, So, it's a bit crazy, really. But it's not that crazy when you sort of unpick what people are like. I mean, there's cleverer people than me have done this. There's a guy called Professor Everett Rogers, he's a consultant of some sort, but he did the whole thing about the law of diffusion of innovation. So you had the kind of the innovators, the early adopters, yada yada. Everybody knows about it basically, but it's a small proportion of really maverick people who are quite risk tolerant who will try new things. So if you're asking, if every pitch brief has got give me something innovative, well, to be frank, 90% of the people running these pitches are never going to run with something innovative. Yeah. But fortunately, there are the 10% of people in our industry, and they're bloody brilliant to work with, who are more than comfortable and do really innovative things. And I'd say some of the most interesting work I've done over the years, let's go further, almost all of the most interesting work I've done over the years has been with people like that. And it's not uncommon for me to do a job with someone like that, genuinely, collectively come up with a bright new idea and actually, resell that idea umpteen times, into different pharma companies with people who perhaps are possibly just a little bit more risk averse or not as maverick, let's say, as a person that runs with someone really brand new and kind of and that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being at any point on that curve. What's good is to just recognise where you are on that curve and then act accordingly.
That was a very similar conversation I had with somebody else on the podcast. We talked a little bit about this in this series that it can be very easy to have this kind of suite of ideas for everything, but actually you've got to be really quite specific because we're talking mainly from a sales and a commercial idea. What innovative ideas have you come up with to try and meet the needs of your customer? And that customer that you see in the morning might be quite happy with the way in which you present over an iPad, but the customer in the afternoon wants a completely different solution, completely different innovative solution. So it's then down to you as an individual, whether you're the salesperson or the sales manager or whatever, to be ready to adapt to that. And I think that's the one thing we have seen in pharma over the years, where individuals who are out on the road or in front of customers need to be more adaptable now in terms of what customers need, not necessarily from the product perspective, but in terms of how they want to be presented to. And especially now, obviously we've come through COVID in terms of the different ways in which we communicate with each other over Teams and over what we are doing just now. Some people love that. But there's still a lot of people out there like that kind of traditional, if you want to call it, sit down in front of me, let's grab a coffee and let's have a chat, eyeball to eyeball, so to speak. So I think it's you've obviously come out of the kind of pharma side and working for big pharma companies. Did you exit? I mean, I know you still deal with pharma companies as well. But did you decide you wanted to come out of the pharma companies because perhaps there was that element of frustration with you there, because you wanted to try things that you thought, I can't because of, regulations or whatever?
I mean, I'd love to say my life was that planned. No, I think I came out because probably I was getting bored doing the same old, same old. Yeah. Probably that boredom was manifesting slightly as frustration and irritation and, generally being a bit obnoxious. And it became time to find a new job, and at the time I thought, okay, well, I could go and do another product management marketing type role, or I could go and do something a bit different. And I thought I'll set my own company up. So at the time I was going to set my own company up, a sort of made-ed shop. That was my original plan. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting down with a guy who owned an ad agency and a market research outfit, had just sold them into a small network and was sort of doing the classic buy and build, but he was right at the start of his journey. And he sort of laughed at me and he said, it's not as easy as you think. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, you would say that. Thanks for the kind of vote of confidence. But then he did say to me, and I will thank him to this day, he says, why don't you come and do it for me for 6 months, right? And then, you'll either find it really easy, you'll go and do it yourself, and, I'll have wasted 6 months of money paying for you. Or you'll maybe think, okay, it's enjoyable, but not as easy, and you'll want it longer. And that's what I did. And I ended up staying for 4 years at that company, working for that chap. And it was interesting. So, the thing I remember is when I came out of pharma, when you're working in a marketing role in pharma, you're on one brand and you're stuck with that brand for years. So after a while, you start running out of ideas. I would say, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, largely probably because you don't speak to the customers as much as you should do. But that was the way of it back then. Still is a little bit these days. But you run out of ideas. You come out agency side, suddenly you're now spread across 15 clients as a strategist, right? Okay, so you're having like new ideas every day, and each idea has can proliferate into other clients' sort of conversations. So, I think I learned a ton about. I learned a whole load of other problems that existed in the world of selling to healthcare professionals that just were not a part of the brands I'd worked on. And of course, problems then give you the idea to come up with ideas to solve these problems. Always yourself, sometimes it's other people that come up with them. But you need problems to be innovative. If you don't have problems, you can't innovate. What's the point? So you're working across lots of brands. You usually see all the problems, and that's good, and then you can, and then so that was the point when I came over. So did I plan it? Definitely not. But did moving out of one brand management role into a sort of an agency strategy type role change the amount of innovation that was expected? Yeah, definitely.
So pharma companies come to you now, or you kind of
yes.
Sorry?
I'm lucky, yes.
You're lucky, yes. So let's say so when they do, and obviously you're like me, you're obviously reaching out to people, continually, pitching what it is that you do. So why do they come to you for that innovative solution? What I mean, what is it? Because they don't have that talent in house, or they just want an extra set of eyes or an extra mindset on it? Because I know, without again mentioning company names, that you're working with somebody that you and I know just now. Why did they come to you for that kind of help?
I mean, I think So I think they come to lots of different people, and I'm lucky enough that sometimes it's me they come to. Sometimes I manage to kind of persuade them to come to me, in that regard. Sometimes they know about the sort of things that I'm maybe perhaps reasonably good at, and they'll come because that's something they want solving. Do they have the talent in house? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm no more or less intelligent than anybody else that works in a market role in a pharma company, so they've definitely got it. The issue that I think perhaps pharma companies suffer from a little bit, and the reason they sometimes need to go outside, I think there's two. I think the person that does well in a brand manager role these days isn't the person that's on the front end of the comfort with risk curve, right? They're actually schooled and corralled to be intolerant of risk. Okay, so they tend to do things that are unlikely to cause problems. And if you're in that role, whether you are at the end of the spectrum or not, it's difficult to be like that in a pharma company headcount role, because the world is constructed to make that difficult. Going out the door is in some ways useful, because it's a font of new ideas from people who just don't have to be constrained by the rules, so they can come up with all ideas. Some are completely bonkers, and some are pretty good. And as the pharma company, you got the luxury of basically going, there's no way we're doing that one, or that one, or that one. That one's just scary enough. We're going to go that one, And so you can offshore that difficult sort of structure issue.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it's helpful to go outside. I don't know if they always necessarily go outside for that reason, but certainly that's probably a good reason to go outside. The other thing, what they tell me is it's useful to go out to people on the outside because they see what lots of other companies do.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain truth to that.
Yeah, I get that.
You're catching a bigger pool of ideas. You also get to get a sense of whether an idea has worked or not before it's done it in a different therapy area, let's say. But truth be told, I think the biggest win, although I don't know that they necessarily see it that way, but I think the biggest win, looking from my perspective, is I don't have to be constrained by any rules. I get to think from first principles every single time. The only issue I've got is whether or not somebody wants to pay for my idea, and therefore, at least there's a sort of fairly large number of new ideas pop out of my conversations. Not me, but certainly pop out of my conversations, but simply because I'm not worrying about the structures that sit around about them. You then take the package, you can make it work in the pharma space.
Yeah, good.
That was a long answer.
No, that's good. No, but it does help, because, again, in terms of my day job, we're in a similar kind of mindset to you, where we're trying to present ideas to companies slightly different. They do have, the talent or the resource in house to do some of the stuff that we do, but also we can go to them and say, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And yeah, we have, but we're not able to do it. Okay, and what about this? Actually, no, we didn't, because that is what we do, from a recruitment perspective and a talent lifecycle perspective, from start right through to finish, and a whole load of other things that go on with it. So there is a common thread between what you do and what we do, although we don't do marketing, you don't do recruitment, and to see what companies are, why they use people like ourselves. And moving to the kind of ultimately the end user, which in most cases is the NHS, so as our clinicians, as our nurses, and all the people that effectively are using pharmaceutical company drugs, what do you think their perception is of, seeing innovative solutions from pharma companies? Do you think they're getting fed up, with, innovative solutions? Do you think that, they are, they want to see more? Do you think they're quite comfortable when pharma companies say, "Listen, I've got another idea for you"? What do you think is a perception with the NHS of what pharma offers from an innovative perspective?
I think I would probably slightly unkindly put it. I think most senior doctors working in the NHS looking at pharma would be somewhat underwhelmed by the innovation coming out of marketing departments. I think they see innovation in the drugs. The initiatives, much
Okay.
less. I mean, you know, and not all doctors are very, I mean, I work with doctors every single day of the week, practicing doctors in this country and in other countries. That's part of my innovation, is that all that we do is always co-created with doctors. So that therefore means that I need to speak to doctors all of the time. And I'd say most doctors are not innovative either. And why? Because they're human beings and they follow the same spectrum of distribution as the rest of us, you know. And so actually they're quite happy with not too much innovation, because then the situation is manageable. But yeah, again, you know, go looking. There are 10% of these guys are phenomenally innovative. You know, I mean, I know practicing in the NHS, in their specialty, who are also inventors on their part-time business, you know, who have got, you know, money from venture capital behind new inventions that they've come up with.
That's true. Yeah.
Clearly they're good doctors and they
Yeah.
can treat patients really well, but, you know, they see little problems and they're super frustrated by the fact that nobody's invented an answer for it, you know. You know, they're the mavericks, but again, you know, you'll get these same people that can apply that type of thinking to some of the pharma problems. In fact, pharma's problems, when I talk from a marketeer's perspective, aren't really pharma's problems. They're usually healthcare professional to patient management problems. And what I see all too often is pharma trying to solve these problems themselves, or expecting the doctor to just come up with a magic answer for them that they then have to go and implement, which they never can implement because of all the rules they've got. And you know, that kind of co-creative environment, it's not that difficult sometimes to solve some of these what are perceived to be quite tricky problems, you know. But you need the right doctor and you need the right pharma client.
Absolutely.
Who's willing to try something different, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's where you do see over the years, again, you can think back and you can see where pharma and NHS, you know, partner really well, you know, because it's a particular, as you say, brilliant doctor who's got an idea, and they've got their day job, wherever that may be, in terms of practicing medicine or whatever, but then they've got an idea that they share with a pharma company and say, actually, I've got an idea with this. So you could, I mean, has maybe come more to the light over the past couple of years because it's so public with, you know, for the vaccines, for example, with COVID, you know, where everybody was, you know, made aware of what was going on, you know, with the different pharma companies that were helping to create these vaccines, and all the pharma company names that were mentioned that are familiar to you and I, but to Joe Bloggs, who's not involved in their industry, had never heard of them. Then they start to see how pharma and the NHS and pharma and the patients really do work together. And I saw that, you know, a few people that friends, particularly, or some family who are not in our industry, they could start to see, all right, that's how it works. That's how it all connects. That's how it all joins up. And because it can get a bit of a bad reputation sometimes in our industry, and I think for all the wrong reasons. But then as soon as people we're getting these jags in their arms, they can start to see, right, okay, I got that from that company or that company. So you can really see the partnership working together on those occasions, can't you?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, you're right. I mean, pharma's a little bit sort of black box for anybody that doesn't work in pharma. You know, it's sort of like the big bad evil empire. It's a bit like the banks. Yeah, but I think once people kind of realise what it does a bit more clearly, I think they're more interested. But I mean, it's you know, I mean, you sort of take that back to kind of innovation, though. You know, the topic of this, and you know, vaccines were a good example of innovation moving quickly. But why did we manage? So why is it we haven't been able to make vaccines for a coronavirus for forever, and then suddenly when we need one, a year later, there's umpteen companies are cranking. And I think I know the answer to that. I think anybody that has the first sort of, you know, thought about it, really thinking logically, knows the answer to that. Is that it was de-risked. So if you remove a lot of the risk,
a lot of that was removed. Absolutely, yep.
Then development moves forward so much more quickly. Now, in a normal situation when you don't have a pandemic, that's probably not the thing you necessarily want to do, because, you know, if you de-risk, then you increase. If you take away some of the blocks, rather, you increase risk, you know. And, you know, I think we got quite lucky with our sort of vaccine program, you know. But then if you apply the same idea to sort of the market and services space, the marketing space, if you want people to be innovative, you've got to let them take risks, bold risks, but it's still going to be. And I'm not talking about risks where you're clearly sailing close to the wind in terms of breaking a regulation.
Yeah.
In terms of, we might try this and it'll basically make no money. It might even cost us. In fact, we might look a bit daft. As long as you're not breaking rules or creating patient safety issues or anything like that, what's wrong with that? I think every marketeer should be spending 10% of their annual budget on random stuff that just might work and just might not work, but certainly won't be sent to jail or put in hospital.
Absolutely. I think in any, we're talking about pharma, but in our space as well, we try and encourage the guys when they're not stressed all the time with trying to recruit and fill jobs. Say, what ideas have we got to do this? How can we develop that? How can we make it grow? But equally having that honesty to say that no, we're not doing that. That's not going to work. But here's why it's not going to work. And it's not just a case of completely poo-pooing it. I think it's really important that, especially as leaders, within the industries that we're in, to listen to ideas and allow people to come up with ideas, exhaust it, and if it's not working, say no, but say why it's a no, and because, as I said at the start of this conversation, if we ever get to the point where nobody's come up with innovative solutions or ideas, it just becomes dead, and not an exciting place to work.
I agree. And I think one of the other issues that we have is I just think people generally have when it comes to innovation actually is, I see a lot in the market research space. You see sort of discussion guides written and people say, well, what would you do differently, doctor? And the doctor's sitting there thinking, I've got no bloody idea what I would do differently. If I knew that, I'd be doing that differently already. But if you just ask someone for new ideas, you see it in brainstorms and sort of pharma companies where rooms full of marketeers and that, let's get loads of new tactical ideas out. Let's not do that, because honestly, nobody's going to come up with anything new, and it's going to be the biggest waste of an hour on planet Earth. And it's motivating for everybody who struggles to come up with anything interesting and new. A far better idea would be to sit and think about, let's write down all the problems we haven't solved yet. Describe in detail why we haven't solved these problems yet. I think the point I'm making is that I think when people try and be innovative, they focus on the wrong thing. They focus on the answer, which they're never going to invent, because they can't actually find and thought properly about the problem. So one of my, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but a part of my personality, I'm obsessed with spotting problems. You might call me a miserable git, but I constantly am irritated by unfixed problems, and it drives me mad. And I'll see someone, I think, well, why is that not working? I had the misfortune after a cycling accident a few years back to spend some time in hospital, and I remember I got delivered on a bed to the wrong ward. I'm on the wrong bloody ward. I'm not connected to the things I ought to be connected up to right now. They're supposed to keep me alive. And the nurse is standing in the corner twiddling her thumbs, doing nothing useful. So having solved the nurse doing nothing useful fix my stuff problem by shouting out and asking, making myself heard. Actually, I then spent the next 7 days of my hospital stay pondering, why is this bloody hospital so inefficient that it manages to sort of deliver someone to the wrong ward? It's just an exercise, because out of that I had about 10 different things that Findlay Park Hospital ought to fix to one effective unit. This is an award-winning hospital, by the way, award-winning my backside. Or award threshold is very low, let's be but I think it's because people don't think about the problems, and they don't unpick problems. You apply that in a marketing space, start thinking about the problem, ask your customer what the bloody problem is, get the problem, because bloody hell, they'll be good at unpicking it. They have to live with it every day, and listen carefully, and get them to help you ideate answers. And actually try something, just do something different for the sake of doing something different. I think you need to have that mindset to innovate. If you don't have it, you never will. And you don't, fine. It's not
spot on, absolutely.
You don't need, you don't want everybody innovating. You want about 10% of people innovating, because that's what we're all comfortable with as human beings.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I like that. I'm sure that hospital was quite pleased to see you go, mind you.
I suspect they will, yes.
Get him out the door, because he's trying to solve too many problems and he's been a pest. But no, you're right, because I think, again, within the kind of recruitment space, which is my day job, eventually when you do speak to a client, they're coming to you because they've got a problem. That problem tends to be that, you know, they're maybe been struggling to fill that vacancy for whatever reason. So you're right. So, and one of the things that, you know, I was trained on very early in my recruitment career is identifying what the problem is. So saying, right, what is the issue? Why are you not filling this job? How can we help solve this problem? You know, and doing that whole kind of needs analysis part, you know, first and foremost, before diving in with bang, this is what we can do. And yeah, I think you're spot on, and offering that kind of solution. So that's a good, really good way of putting it, and a good way of wrapping this up, Bruce, as well, because I know that knowing you well enough that you could quite comfortably talk about this for another half an hour or maybe even slightly longer.
Not necessarily in a way that anybody else would want to listen to, but yes, you're right.
No, listen, really good of you to give me some of your time today, and hopefully I'm sure the people that are watching this, they're listening to it, have got some kind of you know, little bit of extra knowledge to help, and that's part of what we do. Part of what we do in this podcast is try and remove some of that the barriers of knowledge sharing that can exist from time to time within our industry, and help each other out. You know, we're part of a brilliant industry. I've been part of it for a long time. You have as well, and we see the value in what everybody does within our industry. So hopefully this can help just to add a little bit more knowledge. Maybe it doesn't, but you've enjoyed listening to two Scottish guys talking about what we think is innovative within pharma. So thank you for your time, Bruce. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too, Colin.
And we'll catch up soon. Okay, take care. Thank you. Cheers.